From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. China's expanded visa-free policy introduced last year has sparked a wave of international travelers eager to explore the China travel experience and what China has to offer. With better infrastructure and improved tourist services, visitors are enjoying local flavors, exploring iconic Chinese landmarks, and of course, diving into the vibrant Chinese culture. As they walk among the skyscrapers, many are feeling the modern vibe of China. The phrase "city, bu city" is creating a buzz on Chinese social media. Why is that? Let's take a look.
常常 city 不 city， 好 city 啊，好 city 啊，好 city 啊啊！
上海的公园 city 不 city 啊？
重庆 city 不 city 啊？
好广东 city 啊
！City 不 city? What does it mean?
I'm really in the middle of a moment that I don't want to forget. It's something that's very city.
As the phrase sweeps across social media, it's clear that China is where visitors don't want to forget. More and more people are flocking here to explore the real China. On social media, China travel is another trending topic. Foreign tourists who've been to China are actively sharing their experiences through videos, which often attract millions of views.
This is crazy. It feels so different.
It's like we're in the future.
Amazing country, full of friendly locals.
The best first impressions so far of a country.
Chinese food is on a whole nother level.
And it's way better.
Welcome to China.
In the first 5 months of this year, China received over 12 million foreign travelers, over 7 million of whom enjoyed visa-free entry. Foreign citizens from 54 countries who enter China through the designated 37 entry ports and hold valid travel documents will be allowed to stay for up to 144 hours.
Not once did we ever feel unsafe. We walked around pretty much everywhere.
Different from what the Western media reports about China. I was literally blown away by how modern it is, how decent, how clean.
It's also very clean. Like, if you just look at these streets, every single tile is perfect.
Everything is quiet, the cars are electric, there's so much nature.
Yeah, it's such a great day. Everything's so green. People have been so friendly.
The most beautiful city I have ever been in.
Safety, modernity, cleanliness, kindness. These are the key words foreign visitors find out about China, as Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said.
高兴看到外国朋友们在中国享受美景美食，亲身感受生动真实的中国。中国就在这里，欢迎大家来。
So what is driving the China travel surge? How do global visitors feel about modern China after experiencing all these conveniences? Now, joining us today at this hour in Ibiza, Spain, is Duan Yanling, a renowned curator. And in Seoul, South Korea, we have David Moser, associate professor at Capital Normal University. Welcome, both of you, to the Hub on CGTN. It's great to have you. David, why don't I go to you first? I mean, city, bu city. As a master of the Chinese language, obviously, apparently, this is a mixture of English and Chinese, but what's interesting is it is gaining traction. It is becoming so popular. You hear it all the time, online, offline, on the street. Why is this phrase city, bu city, so popular now?
Well, yeah, I think that the mixture of Chinese and English is part of it. Everyone finds that a lot of fun. And I see people spontaneously doing that all the time just for fun. I think the word cool started out that way. It was just inserting the word cool into Chinese, and now it's become a word. It seems to me to sort of indicate or to describe something that has what we might call in English the wow factor. Something that makes you go, wow, I didn't know about this. Something that's amazing about a big city, a distinctive novel aspect that can sort of define a city, something that only this city has, and something that will bring you back again, or something you would recommend to your friends, and so on and so forth. I think nowadays with virtual reality and movies, that there's a higher bar for tourism. Tourists want to see something that sticks with them, that's worth blogging about, something unforeseen, and that's part of soft power, right? It makes you attracted to it, and you want to tell the world about it. For me, at my age, I'm kind of a boo city person. I still like the old parts of Beijing, the Hutong and the Great Wall. I love that stuff, but I do understand why people like my daughter want to get that wow factor, the city bu city aspect. I certainly understand.
Yanling in Ibiza, Spain. Why do you think is behind the popularity of this phrase, city bu city?
I feel we are, like David said, we live in this digital reality, and the convenience and the diversity and richness of a culture that city has provided now somehow seems to be accessible through this little screen. So I feel there's a thought, or at least emergent belief, that we could live anywhere in the world, and we can travel more and working more and choosing different, like digital nomads, or this new, I know also Tamping, there's a new way of urban culture is changing. So I think this city bu city is definitely a question for many. But for me, from a far away and looking at what the Chinese city is for overseas or so-called foreigners, there's an interesting phenomenon. I realize that people see Chinese city as some kind of futuristic sci-fi cyber reality that we used to imagine what Japan or Korea was. I feel this kind of excitement or curiosity to some degree. But to me, I'm a little bit like David. I think the options, choices are wonderful. City and urban, these intersections or this hybrid living will be very interesting. If you can manage well, you can double the tourist attractions and really create more diversity to make the attractions in one go. And that's what I think is a very exciting prospects ahead.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
International travelers find Chinese cities, like you said, futuristic, modern, full of technology elements. What do you think makes Chinese cities, urban areas, metropolises, unique, standing out from, let's say, European urban areas where you live?
I guess for Europeans, particularly, if I can say, this city represents something about history and much more about this grand glory that actually becoming the past. But from European eyes, looking at China, really, there's a fascination about the speed, and this instead of American dream, there's a China miracle, of course, for those who really still keep a very friendly eyes towards China. But from my personal experiences, through the China city as a hub, we call it hub here, and most Europeans still looking at China as this possibility to decode or experience something much more different, far, far away, exotically, aesthetically so different. I personally, as a very keen on urban interventions and also the digital sort of planetary way of living, I do see that there's the territory for Chinese city to offer much more accessible information and experiential experiences, and guiding tourists have a more so-called cultural experiences that tap into this really modern, new, innovative culture. And that part of the city richness is very overlooked usually from the top-down approach, I see. And from the outsider tourism to look at the Chinese city is really for seeing this technological advancement, this speed trains, all this possibility. When I come here, am I going to be fascinated, or am I going to be fall in love with? There's a very two different mentality or sensitivity to it. So I personally, as someone really trying to bridge these worlds, I would love to see this a soft power, this gentleness, this is much more warmness that David always mentions, that Chinese and Chinese culture always have been known for, and we lives in our blood, can be still remained while we're embracing this technological advancement. That will make China extremely attractive in every aspect. And that's really I was hoping and working
for. I'm so glad you touched upon the softer side of things, the Chinese culture, the social fabrics, the urban vibes that the Chinese cities give, and looking at the Chinese people in the eye as if you can feel their soul. David, you lived in China for the longest time. How would you describe the vibes that Chinese cities give and the Chinese people give to an international traveler, say, who have never been to China before?
I think that there's no substitute for actually going to China and seeing it firsthand. We really need to provide opportunities and more available opportunities to see the real China. And it's also its mixture of old and new, as you were talking about, the culture as well as the sights and experiences. The first time my family visited China, even though I had talked to them for years about what this country was about and what it looked like and sent them hundreds of photos, they still had a hard time, sort of understanding it when they actually got there. It was still a surprise to them to see it firsthand. In fact, I would say they were wowed, to use that word. And an example of this sort of different levels of understanding, just taking the high-speed train for them from Beijing to Shanghai was an amazing experience, even though they'd read about it and seen lots of images. And also the unexpected interactions that can happen if you're a tourist. On the train, my niece, my sister's daughter, struck up a conversation with a somewhat elderly woman on the train, but she couldn't speak English. So my niece, pulled out her smartphone and turned on her translation app, and they started to have a lengthy conversation back and forth with the translation app. And I would say they talked 40 minutes or so, and I would dare say my niece learned a lot more about China, or had a very different view of China than she would have ever gotten by watching movies and downloading websites, and also between just being a tourist in the big city, sitting down with a Chinese person and actually exchanging information and understanding was an amazing thing. And you can only do that if you're actually in the country itself. So I think it's very valuable that we keep that up.
Yanling, what do you think? I mean, when it comes to the warmth of the Chinese people, been born and raised here, I would certainly argue that there's a great level of warmth projected by the Chinese people, especially when there are foreign visitors. Confucius once said, "Isn't it a pleasure after all when we have friends visiting from afar?" I think it says a lot about the Chinese hospitality, but sometimes it is lost in translation. What do you think, Yanling?
I think besides us, we kind of quite savvy with all different parts of the world, at least regards so-called China and outside China. And we have to admit there's a vast misinformation. And I'm not claiming China is the best place. I just think there's a really proportionally not good enough information available for justify what China really is. And for that, I feel there's a big urge to know the inside China story, besides those inconveniences of customs. But over the years, I've been organized and been invited to organize and curate lots of conferences and retreats. I found that there is a big way that hunger for people to touch in Chinese traditional and the mystical and really ancient sites and places. For those kind of tourists, I feel is a true value for Chinese culture and Chinese society to embrace and to support, because those are beyond the tourists who want to judge the water is hot or cold. Those are people really came with a deep inquiry and deep admirations and respect. And they will be the incredible ambassadors for the Chinese warmthness and take in that warmness in the right state of mind, right? If you are looking things in a judgmental eye, everything will be difficult. The temperature is always going to be wrong. But if those level of in-depth learning and retreating and inquiring Chinese medicine, holistic way, so much things that I would say the Chinese culture are known for, and often we take for granted. And that type of cultural heritage can be highlighted and embraced by modern adaptations or a way of communication. That's something I feel will be really, really helpful for people stop complaining of hot water or telling me if there's a hot water somewhere find in China. So I think there's a vast majority of ignorance regarding China still, if we be friend. So there's the travel itself. I really, like David said, I always say there's nothing can replace the physically to be in a place, and the traveling will be always keep as our human wonder. And I've loved to see that popping up in China, will having more real in-depth pilgrimages and beside the tourists and coming or for a business trip and see the short-term gain from the Chinese market. And that's really something I think is happening very soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, traveling really keeps us having this open mind and open eyes, and really making us humble. What do you think of this expanded visa-free policies initiated by the Chinese government, and what do you think of it, and what do your friends in Europe, in Spain, think about it?
I mean, of course, this is like a really cheers for like with both hands, because it's 15 days. It's really a perfect length for in-depth travel, and usually we know how many people really love to go this. Rise and go, this kind of traveling happening a lot. Right now, at least it's very, very significant practical has lifted. So in fact, actually, when I would talk about tea tours, let's get up a cultural tour, now we really can just cut all the planning time and just feel so much freedom. And I think this is a very, very great step for China really enter this whole exchange and cultural vibrancy of this exchange. So I definitely think it's a great move, and hopefully they will extend even to more in a due time, more visible. For instance, England is not included. Yeah, I don't know if there's a policy involved, but Spain, Italy, and we are really feeling a lot of ease and easiness, and this is incredibly important step. Yeah.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities, reinvent, find new opportunities, discover a path forward. CGTN, see the difference.
Yeah, exactly. David, you said you wanted to say something else?
For a long time, what I heard from tourists and my friends who would visit China and my students was the language barrier, because even if they came with some Chinese, it's really hard if you're not used to the a non-alphabetic language to negotiate the environment. And that goes for, of course, for tourists who are totally clueless when they get to China. That's not a problem in France or Italy or places where you can guess. But I think there's good news on the horizon, because there's so many new digital tools, these translation apps, sometimes just speaking in real time. So that means that this lowered the bar quite a bit. My daughter, when she came here, went to the National Museum, and she could just use her app to actually translate even some of the signage that was in Chinese, and was getting a much better translation than I could give her. I think that for some people who come, they'll actually be what I call bitten by the China bug. They really want to learn more about it, and they'll dive into the language and really try to learn it. But for those who just want the experience and need to get as much information, I think we've got digital tools to make that a much, much better situation already. And I think that will break a lot of these language barriers and make China experience much more fun and and information rich than it has been in the past.
Yanling, you think differently?
Not differently, just adding on, there's two angles. The other ones are also some of my dear friends and former colleagues developing AI-driven learning for Chinese, for overseas Chinese and international community. So I think there's also a huge trend that brings this 1/5 of the population's language into the rest of the world. So I think there's also big zest for foreigners visiting a country, learn the local language. I think that's also one thing I want to add it on. But the other thing about to be able to increase the English communicational skills, a local Chinese level, I do find it extremely increasing rate of youngsters speaking great English. So I know that we are talking about this changes. I just want to highlight those changes are really ease those obstacles. But those tabs, those apps, or those tools are definitely something to embrace. And I think that can be developed pretty fast as long as we pay attention to. But to be able to support that Chinese language, and particularly because it carries the code of the culture, and to increase that level of creativity or learning and exchange will be super important as a soft power behind the driving the tourism or healthy tourism forward.
Now, fortunately, WeChat Pay accepts foreign credit cards. Alipay has long been accepting foreign credit cards. What else can the Chinese government do to make the international traveling experience more pleasant? David?
Nowadays, I can just use my passport to scan when I go to the train station. I don't have to wait in a separate line and do lots of kind of ordering in advance. That's very nice. Like I can scan and enter just like a Chinese national with their ID cards, which is much more convenient. I see in the universities and the people that I run into lots of very, very talented young people who are not only learning English but various other languages, all the European languages and Japanese and so forth. I wonder if the situation might not be improved if they could put a little bit of funding into letting there be more sort of friendly tour guides or sort of hostesses and hosts in the airports and train stations that can be there to help out when you have, someone who can speak the language and solve the problem when needed. I don't know how many people you would need, but I think there's so many vast resources of talented language speakers in China now that it would be good to make use of them. Other than that, I think that they're doing a great job. It's a good idea to register in advance online so that when they get to Beijing or wherever they're going, they already are in the system and the information's already there. But I think that's just a technological problem. I think they're going to fix that pretty soon. In fact, when I go to train stations now, my name and passport number is already in the system. So it saves a huge amount of time.
Yanling, what do you think are the things that we can improve upon?
I would like just to follow up with what David mentioned about tap into talents and attract the youth who has multiple talents, particular language. We were once much younger, and there is an enthusiasm to contribute. Every larger conference, exhibitions, what we do, large resources, it is untapped volunteer faces, the youth who love to gain great experiences. So what I've seen, just like when we're working with the Finnish Design Week, right? They designed this 20,000 entrepreneurship conference during their worst tourism season of February. It's cold and it's wet, but they can tap into these resources and becoming a very popular and very vibrant economy. And I see this to design a theme and really innovative, big, large scale, which part of Beijing Design Week I was working with, was really initiated for that reason. If that can be really becoming another big effort to attract the vast diverse of tourism, the purpose travel we call it, that will be driving lots of those youth who have this learning zest to really contribute. And I think that they're going to make the city much more vibrant, economically much more healthy, because like short-term and quick tourism, we all know they put a lot of stress on a normal traditional tourism destinations and actually that need a little bit diversify, otherwise too much seasonal. And that's a part of work I do in Ibiza instead of you say it as a party. And we actually work on responsible travel, ecotourism, and eco restoration driven by tourists, right? So I think this kind of an innovative spirits and design really need to be applied to make the economy more vibrant. The other thing to me is like we know that tea culture is really widespread in the world. And Berlin today has the world's biggest tea art festival. And why not you have a tea train and tea lounge in all those places to introduce the Chinese culture firsthand? I think there's a lot of space and time for rally and really tap into the youth and creativity. And that will make this country, because it is a country of youth, the Asia, much more attractive and long-lastingly sustainable, I would say.
And one last question, David. We have to talk about the news of the day, the third plenum of the CPC that is taking place with economic growth and modernization in focus. We've heard about the data from Chinese officials. The Chinese economy grew by 5% in the first half of the year, 4.7%, slower than some expected in the second quarter, but the first quarter growth was considered robust, 5.3%. What are you looking out for when it comes to the third plenum, modernity, expectations of further opening up?
Yeah, I think that it seems like there's a lot of optimism about the Chinese economy now. I think that just to link it to tourism, I think that if you look at it in terms of more people coming to China, and also that's a particular aspect of the economy, tourism. I think that people who are investors, potential investors, people who are looking for a new business model, young people wanting to collaborate or to work together to build the economy or to take part in the rising economy, I think that's all part of the same package, that you need to get tourists, but you also need to get interested people in the business world to see it firsthand and to make the necessary context at the beginning to actually start some kind of collaboration. So it's a win-win all the way. I'm sure that tourism is a big part of the subject matter of the third plenum for sure. That's something that's in their sights, and they focused on that for sure. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the future economy.
David and Yanling, thank you both so very much for joining us at this hour. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that will do it for this edition of The Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Our news coverage continues on CGTN. Bye and take care.